Hello and welcome to the Pilot Money Podcast. My name is Alex Tapia, President and Founder of Aviation Retirement Strategies and ARS Private Wealth. Together, we give you the tools and advice you need to take advantage of the ever-changing financial world and help you take care of the business end of your professional aviation career. As financial fiduciaries, we bring you up-to-date, relevant, and independent information so that you can make sound financial decisions for yourself, your family, and your eventual retirement from the airlines. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on any timely information that we bring to the professional aviation community. Or you can also visit us online at www.pilotmoney.com. Once again, welcome to the Pilot Money Podcast. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining me here at the Pilot Money Podcast, coming at you from the ARS National Headquarters at the George Bush Intercontinental Airport here in Houston, Texas. Today, we're going to talk about the market-based cash balance plan for the United Airlines Pilots Group and the confusion that's been going on about the letter of agreement that the union and the company have made about potentially speeding up the market-based cash balance plan prior to its actual formal approval from the IRS. Now, I've gone through all the paperwork that's been sent out and sat with a couple of people on the forums, read through some of the threads there, and it seems to me that there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of opinions out there. So we're hopefully today that we're going to be able to clear some things up and put things into common sense words so that things are easier to understand. And when you go to vote for this thing, which the voting window opened today and it closes on December 10th, that you have a more informed basis from which to vote on and how it specifically applies to you, because that's really what's important. If you are a United Airlines pilot, the benefit package that you have available to you, whether you know it or not, is a highly sophisticated and amazing plan. Provides you with a lot of options, and it gives you all the tools that you need to hopefully make your retirement as best as it can be for you and your entire family. You have the Pilot Retirement Account Plan, which houses your 401k, to which you can make pre-tax contributions, Roth contributions, post-tax contributions. You have a defined contribution plan. This is where the company puts money into the plan for you. You have long-term disability plan, loss of license insurance. You have all of these amazing things that most people simply don't have the luxury of having. To give you the proper analogy, in terms of being a United Airlines pilot and your benefit package, is you are literally flying the 787 of the fleet. It is a highly sophisticated and capable machine, capable of going far. The engines are nice and fuel efficient. The cabin pressure is nice and low. It's a very quiet aircraft. That literally represents your benefit package as compared to most other benefit packages at other companies. The problem is that most pilots are flying the 787, but they never put the gear and the flaps up, meaning that you're not taking full advantage of what this benefit package can actually do, and you're not customizing it to such a degree to where it benefits you specifically in your personal financial life. What we try to do is we try to put the gear and the flaps up for you, at least show you where that switch is, so that you can take full advantage of what this thing can actually do. From an additional benefit standpoint, the market-based cash balance plan is simply just another tool, another gadget that they added to this amazing machine to make it work even better than it already is. As we go through this video and we talk about some of the potential changes that they're asking you to vote on, please keep in mind that you can always give us a call if you have any questions how these things particularly apply to your specific situation, because that's really what counts. It's your vote, this is your financial life, and this is your contract that you're dealing with. So if you need any help trying to figure things out, we're always happy to help. So today, we're going to go ahead and talk about some high-level overview of some of these changes and kind of what they mean. So hopefully we could take away some confusion, because I have been reading all these forums and I've been looking at the literature that's been put out, and there seems to be a lot of confusion out there as to what's what and what it is not. And so hopefully we're going to clear some of that stuff out today in the following information that we're going to put out for you. Now, to put all this into perspective, let's start out at the 35,000-foot level and work our way down into the details. All of this confusion really started because you, as pilots at United Airlines, have such an amazing contract that you voted in, and you have this compensation package that is pretty much unmatched unless you're working for another legacy carrier. And when it comes to retirement plans, you are making so much money that under the contract, you can not only max out your personal 401k contributions, but by contract, since the company has to give you, at least for today, 17% of your salary, they are also getting to the point where they are maxing out certain limitations that the IRS sets for them. Now, in your particular retirement plans, you have two limits that you're always working with. You have a 402G limit, which is technically your 401k limit, which is your personal contributions to the plan. And then when the company contributes, they also have a limit as to how much they can stack away for you on a tax-deferred basis, which is the overall 415 limit. Now, that is the limit that applies to both you and the company as to how much together you can put away into your retirement plan. Now, the problem starts is when both you and the company reach the 415 limit during any given year. What happens to the money that the company is contractually obligated to continue giving you based on your salary? And they can do it in several ways. At United Airlines, they contractually, in the last contract, they created something called a retiree health account. That was a vehicle in which the company can continue giving you money on a tax-deferred basis, but put it into account that's designed for medical expenses when you retire. Now, the other option was to give you that money and basically give you as a paycheck, but that would require you to pay the maximum amount of taxes, because once you get up to that income level where you're maxing out the 415 limit, your income tax bracket is pretty high. So that's a giant chunk out of your paycheck that you don't necessarily have to give away if you have another option. Well, in the previous contract, the RHA, or the retiree health account, that was really the only option to stash away money on a tax-deferred basis, but you can only use it when you're in retirement and only use it for medical expenses. Now, back when the negotiations started for all of these new contracts that everybody enjoys today, at least all the legacy carriers, Delta was the first one to implement a new contract with a new feature that was really not very common really anywhere else in the industry in general, and much less airlines. But they were able to add a feature called a market-based cash balance plan. And what that did for them is it allowed for the company to have these defined contributions based on their salary, the 17, 18, whatever it may be, to be able to put money into a market-based cash balance plan, which technically is another vehicle that they can put in money tax deferred. But that vehicle, unlike a retiree health account, that's basically becomes an IRA. Now, it's not necessarily managed or controlled by the pilot. It's controlled by the company, and they manage the money in a very conservative way. But technically, they can stash away money for the pilot on a tax-deferred basis. So rather than them getting taxed on the money as a paycheck, it's another vehicle that they can use in retirement for whatever retirement expenses there are, but without the limitation of only using it for medical expenses. Put in a simpler way, it allowed the pilots to gain some more control over their retirement assets, as opposed to just having it in such a way where they can only use it for a very specific purpose. Now, the way the current contract stands for the United Airlines pilots is that when you and both the company are reaching the maximum contribution limits, which is the 415 limit that the IRS sets for both you and the company, that creates something that we call spillage. And spillage is basically extra money that the company has to continue giving to you based on the contractual obligation of giving you the 17% based on your salary. They have to continue paying you, and this money, this extra money or the spillage, goes into the retiree health account. Now, that is all fine, and a lot of people like the fact that they're going to have some money stashed away for medical expenses in retirement. But a lot of pilots are not too keen on the fact that that balance can become quite large, actually, over time. And they don't want to have too much money in something that they do not have control over, especially at death in terms of estate planning and passing your assets on to heirs or beneficiaries or whatever it may be. So the way pilots do that is they limit their own contributions to their 401k, hence leaving the company more room to put in their contributions. And that in turn will at least limit the spillage into the retiree health account. Now, by adding the market-based cash balance plan into the new contract, it basically gave those pilots that don't necessarily want to have too much spillage into the retiree health account another option to direct funds into in a tax-deferred fashion. So like I said earlier, anytime that you have financial options, that's a good thing. So what's the problem with the retiree health account, the market-based cash balance plan, or just taking the money in cash? So let's go ahead and break those three things down real quick. Although it's never a bad thing to have money for medical expenses when you are in retirement, it is a bad thing for a lot of people when they don't have control over the funds. First of all, the funds that are in that account are not manageable by the individual pilot. There's a committee that manages and makes the investment decisions for whatever money is in there. But probably the biggest drawback to having money in that account is that if for some reason you pass away and then your spouse passes away, if you're married, that the money just gets disappeared and it goes back to the pilot group. So at many airlines, the alternative to the retiree health account is just to take the money in cash. Now, the limitations that you have with taking the money in cash is the fact that when you're making the kind of money that pilots are making these days, especially when they're getting older and getting more senior, closer to retirement, that the tax bill that they have to pay on this paycheck is actually quite large because they're in a higher tax bracket, probably in the highest tax bracket, maybe 37% or maybe in the low 40s, depending on the state that you live in. Now, for the pilots at United Airlines, that simply was not an option. The retiree health account was all that you had. Well, with this new contract, obviously they added the market-based cash balance plan. And the good thing that they did when it came to that part of it, unlike Delta, is that they made it so that you can elect on a yearly basis whether you want the money to go to the retiree health account or the market-based cash balance plan. Where at Delta, for those of you that do not know, when they implemented their contract, it was a one-time election for those who were existing at the company. And if you opted out of it, you can never go back into it. For all their new hires, they're automatically in it, whether they like it or not. But at least with United Airlines, they gave you a choice, and on a yearly basis, you can elect to see where you want this money to go, which is a huge option to have in terms of having the flexibility and control over your own personal financial life, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. It is also important to keep in mind that no matter what happens with this new ruling or this letter of agreement that everybody's going to be voting on, by the time the IRS actually makes a ruling, it will supersede anything that you guys have voted for, because that's going to be the official language for the plan going forward. So let's talk about the limitations that the IRS has set for you contributing to the plan and also the company contributing to the plan. It's a little bit different this year because of the Secure Act 2.0. They have added a small group of people, ages 60, 61, 62, and 63, that can do what's called super catch-up contributions. This is something that's been implemented due to the Secure 2.0 Act. And so that's a little bit different. We've never seen that in years past. But basically, here's how it breaks down. If you $1,000 for the year on a pre-tax basis, if you are in that small group of 60, 61, 62, and 63, you can do super catch-up contributions of an additional $11,250 above the $23,500, giving you a total maximum contribution of pre-tax money of $34,750. Then if you are 64 and up, you can contribute back down to an additional $7,500 for a total of $31,000 in terms of pre-tax contributions to your 401k. Those are your 402g limits. Those are your personal contribution limits. Now, in terms of you and the company, if you are under age 50, you can contribute up to $70,000 along with the company to your plan. If you are age 50 to 59 and 64, you can contribute $77,500. And if you are in that small age group of 60, 61, 62, and 63, you can contribute a total to the plan of $81,250. Okay, so those are the numbers that we're going to be working with in 2025 to help you make the calculations to how much money goes into the plan, whether you want money to go into the RHA in terms of spillage, or you want to go to the cash balance plan if it is approved, and to kind of help you plan out the year in order to maximize your benefits when it comes to your personal situation. Now, you have to also keep in mind that the only reason for all of this, the only reason for this letter of agreement is because the union wants to accelerate the implementation of this plan. Okay, right now, what we're doing is we're waiting for the cash balance plan to be approved by the IRS, but that could take some time, and nobody really knows when they're going to do that. Now, there are, of course, a precedent has been set at Delta Airlines, and they have their the cash balance approved. So that there is a precedent, so it doesn't necessarily have to take very long. But the union is trying to make sure that, or at least attempting to get this market-based cash balance plan implemented in a timely fashion. And what the company is doing is saying, okay, well, we have to wait for an IRS ruling. We don't want to stick our necks out in terms of doing something that the IRS doesn't like. So in order to accelerate the cash balance plan for the pilots, what the union is doing is they're modifying the plan in the hopes to being as compliant with the IRS as possible before they know what the IRS is actually going to rule on. Okay, so we've had some questions about what's up with the date. What's this with July 1? What's going on with that? Why do we have to wait? Why doesn't it start January 1? All those kinds of things. Well, the really basic reason is that this plan doesn't really exist yet. It has to be created. It has to be put into place by Schwab and the company, and I'm sure the union as well. They have to create this plan, get all the pieces in place so that when it actually does get implemented and it becomes active, all your monies go where they need to go, because obviously there's no room for mistake because this is your money and things have to be done correctly. So what they do is they need the time in order to get everything set up and July 1 is when they're anticipating that they can actually get this done for you and have it fully implemented in place. Other than that, that date really has no significance. Other they just need to get their act together to make that happen for you. So when I read the letter of agreement, probably one of the most confusing things about the letter is the fact that they mention something called a contingent benefit rule. Now, a contingent benefit rule basically states that a person cannot receive an additional retirement plan benefit solely based on whether or not they make a 401k contribution to the PRAP or not. In other words, if you're a pilot, your additional benefits of the cash balance plan cannot be based on whether or not you make a contribution to the PRAP in your 401k via voluntary election. So in other words, the contingent benefit rule says if one pilot gets a benefit into the cash balance plan, all the other pilots need to have an equal opportunity to have money put into the cash balance plan as well, and it should not be predicated on whether or not you make 401k contributions. This was something that was demanded by United Airlines in order for them to agree to have the cash balance plan accelerated prior to an IRS ruling on it on a formal basis. Now, I know that sounded pretty confusing, and I get that, and it sounds pretty confusing when you read it as well, which is why earlier I talked about the contribution limits to the plan, which is the your personal contribution limits and the company contributions, the overall contributions of 415 limits, because this is where they come into play. So imagine that you have a pilot, or two pilots rather, making $350,000 a year. And the reason I say $350,000 because that is the 417 limit of the IRS code, which is the number upon which they can make 17% contributions of your salary to the plan. So imagine you have the pilot A and pilot B both making the same amount of money, but pilot A, for some reason, elects to not make any contributions to the 401k plan and only wants the company to contribute to the PRAP by virtue of the 17%. Well, based on $350,000, that pilot is going to be receiving $59,500 to his plan, and that's going to be it for the year. There's not going to be any more after that because he is not making any additional contributions. Now, remember that the total contributions that this pilot is allowed to make is actually $70,000 for the year. So there, for him, there is no chance of spillage into the RHA or any contributions to the cash-based cash balance plan, which is what this letter of agreement obviously is all about. Now, take pilot B, and he's still making $350,000 just like pilot A. Pilot B wants to be a little bit more aggressive on how much he contributes to the 401k, and let's say that he goes ahead and maxes out the 401k at $23,500 for the year of 2025. Well, contractually, he is still entitled to get 17% from the company based on the defined contribution rules. And so the company will also contribute to the PRAP $59,500. So if you do the math, the 401k contributions plus the company contributions actually equal $83,000. Now, if you remember, the limit for the plan overall, the 415 limit, is actually $70,000. So if the cash balance were to be in place, this pilot would have that additional $13,000 spill over into the cash balance plan, where the other pilot who did not make any contributions would have not gotten any contribution to the cash balance plan. So remember that the contingent benefit rule states that both pilots equally have to have the opportunity to spill over into the cash balance plan. So the company asked that they lower the defined contribution limit to the PRAP to $46,500. That way, both pilots making the same amount of money that would be entitled to a total of $59,500 worth of contribution to the PRAP. When it gets limited to $46,500, that additional up to $59,500 is going to spill into the cash balance plan for both pilots in an equal way, regardless of whether they are making 401k contributions or not. Now, I know that those are a lot of numbers being thrown out there. It's kind of hard to mentally keep track of all of the things that are going on because there are a lot of moving parts. But if you have any questions, give me a call, and I'm happy to explain it to you, how it works and how the math behind all of it is set up, if you have any concerns about how that could potentially affect you. The reason that this has become important is because I would imagine that both the company and the union are both anticipating for the cash balance plan to be approved by the IRS with this contingent benefit rule plan in place. And so when the UPA 23 contract was initially put into place, I think that originally they always thought that this was going to be the case. And so now it's coming up to surface because they're trying to actually accelerate this program. But I think that they are thinking that no matter what, this rule is going to be something that was going to be put into effect for the United Airlines pilots. And one of the challenges that I see with the cash balance plan being implemented in July is the fact that most of you are actually very strong savers and you will contribute a lot of money to your 401k. You usually max it out. So if you were to max out your 401k and you hit your contribution limits prior to the company reaching their contribution limits, if you reach your limits before they reach the 46,500, anything that goes up to the 46,500 from that point on is going to spill over into the retiree health account. But beyond that, any money that you make in addition to that is actually going to be paid to you in cash. Now, whether you like the retiree health account or not, at least it's a tax deferred vehicle for you that you can stash money away without having to pay taxes on it today when you're in such a high tax bracket. It's kind of the same concept with the vacation forfeiture. So by using vacation forfeiture and you are reaching your limits, whether it's the defined contribution limit or your personal $70,000 limit or whatever limit it may be, once you go beyond that limit, any vacation forfeiture will also be paid to you in cash and you will have to pay taxes on that money, which is something that you didn't have to do before. For the UPA 23, your long-term disability benefits also qualify for defined contribution plans to the PRAP. But now with this new LOA, your LTD benefits are going to be split as 50% cash going to you and also 50% going into the PRAP. Now, once you start hitting your limits again, once you reach up to the limits, whichever ones they may be, those additional benefits are also going to be paid to you in cash. But I think where the confusion comes in with the long-term disability benefits is the taxation. You have to keep in mind that long-term disability benefits are not taxable. So even though they are paid to you in cash, you are not going to be taxed on these benefits because it's not a taxable event because it's an insurance payment and thus by nature are not taxable. Another benefit that's going to be suspended with this letter agreement is the active HRA account. It used to be that twice a year the company would go in and whatever you had built up into that account, it will be swept into the RHA account for the retiree health account, giving you another way to fund your retirement health benefit account, so to speak. And that's going to be suspended. And it's not really clear whether they're going to reinstate that in the future or not. And so on that same note, and talking about the RHA account, if you're one of those pilots that's really looking to fund your RHA account because you want to take advantage of it when you're in retirement, if this letter of agreement gets approved, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to become very aggressive about contributing to your 401k and maxing everything out, including post-tax contributions, to get you up to your limits as quickly as you can before the company reaches the $46,500 limit, because that is the only way that you're going to have spillage into the RHA account, because once the cash balance plan is in place and it's approved, then you're probably going to not see another way to fund the RHA account in the near future. Now, I hope that I have answered most of your questions and tried to put the stuff out in the most layman terms possible. I know that there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of things going on, and it's still very, very confusing. So please, if you have a chance and if you have some confusion about anything, you're welcome to give us a call. But I think one of the most important parts of this is that you also understand that the union is trying to accelerate the cash balance program for you in order for you to start participating in it prior to the IRS approval. So when they approach the company, and the company is generally very conservative, they'll say, hey, you can, we're going to consider allowing you to do that. But if you do get it into place, and if you do end up getting the pilots to agree to it, we are not going to be liable for any negative consequences later. Because what can happen is if this letter of agreement gets approved and it gets put into place the way the union is envisioning it, along with the company, and when the IRS ruling finally comes out, if they say something completely different or it's not in line with exactly the way that they have envisioned it initially, then there may be a consequence of your taxable or your pre-tax money all of a sudden being taxed to you, or it has to be returned to you in some way. So there's all kinds of things that can happen in the future that are potentially negative for you. Now, nobody's really envisioning this to happen, but it is a possibility. And that is the reason why United told the union that they want to be free of any claim in the future, and they are demanding that the union do not represent you in legal claims against them if the IRS ruling goes a different way. And on that note, please keep in mind that the information that I just presented to you was not intended to try to sway you one way or another. We are completely neutral in this. We actually represent you as an individual investor. We are your financial advisor, but we wanted to give you the information so that you could make sense of what's been put in front of you, because it does require a vote. And when you go to vote for this new letter of agreement, please keep in mind that what other people do or don't do is completely irrelevant in your own personal financial life. Remember, once we step out of the cockpit, we are completely separate, and your financial life is literally as unique as your fingerprint. And you have to keep that in mind in making a decision, because what's right for you may not be right for somebody else, and vice versa. But if you have any questions about that and how to actually make sense of this for your personal situation, that's why we are here. We are your financial advisor. We are happy to help in any way. But in the meantime, if we don't talk to you, we want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.